Welcome back for another episode of Husky Careers Unleashed. My name's Ryan. I'll be your host today, and we've got a special guest joining us right here from Michigan Tech. So, Paige, why don't we kick off this episode by having you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ryan. My name's Paige Short. I'm the Associate Director of Communications here in Student Affairs. I'm also a proud Husky alum. Graduated in 2020 with my bachelor's degree in scientific and technical communication over in the humanities department.
Jumping right in, looking back to when you graduated, did you imagine yourself returning to Michigan Tech within kind of that 5-year time frame in higher education?
So it's a funny question. My journey to Michigan Tech started actually from high school, like many of us, but my first university wasn't actually Michigan Tech. I'm a transfer student. Unlike a lot of our transfer students, I started at the University of Michigan. I did 2 years there, but it wasn't the right fit. And I took a number of years off and I started back here as a part-time student. And before I graduated, I sort of did a little flip flop where I got my full time job here at Michigan Tech before I graduated. So I wound up working an undergraduate student in the Department of University Marketing and Communications. And then eventually a full time position opened up there. And I transitioned to part time undergraduate. My undergraduate work was part time. I took a long time to graduate because life happened, right? Life happens. And a lot of students think that the path is a straight one, but life is complicated and messy. And when I took time off between the University of Michigan and coming back to school at Michigan Tech, I got married. And my life became a lot more complicated when I got married. My home life is, I have a partner with a disability, and I am the person who needs to be making money and supporting my family. I don't have the luxury of being able to go to school full time and just work part time or not work at all. So when I came back to school and there was an opportunity for me to work full time and only go to school part time, that was a dream come true. It took me a little bit longer to graduate, but I was able to have my classes paid for as a part of our employee benefit. And I was able to really figure out where my strengths were and grow into those strengths through professional development opportunities and, building connections and networking. Not just Michigan Tech employers everywhere really are invested in their employees and want them to grow. And I was able to do that while finishing my degree here, and able to support my family, which was, my number one priority. But it took me a lot longer to graduate. The goal isn't always finish in as little time as possible, but is it supporting your family? Is it, learning, being able to be a lifelong learner? It's a little bit different.
I think you bring up a good point there. I feel like in general, gone are the days of somebody enrolling in college and being in and out in 4 years. Like there's more to that experience, that journey than just getting in there and doing it all. So I took a little bit longer in college as well. It took me 6 years. Some of that was going out on co-op and getting professional experience and kind of taking that time off. So I think it's refreshing to hear that there are a lot of people out there who go either longer than what the standard would be for a 4-year degree. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I like how you were able to find an opportunity that fit your personal needs, but also helped you grow in your professional development and then kind of help with that career journey to get you where you are today.
I think it's also really important for everyone, students, my colleagues, peers, people who I see as mentors, everybody, we're all humans, but to remember that failure is a part of life as well. Part of the reason that I took time off from the University of Michigan was that I dropped out, right? That was a dropout experience. I dropped out of college. And people don't like to think about failure or, diversions from their planned path. There's a lot of stigma associated with that because, failure feels like an ending. It feels like, if something bad happens, we fail a class, we fail out of school, or we have to change our paths significantly, then that's it, right? It's over. Well, my life isn't over, right? If I'm advising a student organization right now, and I talk to them, I share this story with them, and they have a hard time at first reconciling this, because they see that I'm a successful professional, right? I'm doing pretty well, and I seem I am, but also I seem like I have things put together, right? We all contain multitudes, and our journeys are very rarely straight lines. There are failure stories in all of us, and there's just a lot of stigma around sharing those. And that's a little bit of our culture, right? But also, it's, we, we all think that everybody but us has a 4.0, and everybody but us has had it easy. But that's us thinking, we're in our own heads about that a little bit. And I think it's good when we share our own struggles in order to help other people with theirs. If we can all see the humanity in each other, and that, we're all having trouble, and we can all support each other in that journey, it's going to help us, and it's going to help our friends and our family.
Well, and I completely agree with your point, kind of recognizing failure. And I like to look at it as it's a learning opportunity. A lot of the greatest achievements and successes of people's lives and careers come out of those moments of struggle and challenge, because it causes you to push the boundary of maybe what you could do if you were kind of on cruise control or taking the easier path. One of my favorite phrases is failing forward. So take what you learned from that failure, apply it towards the future, and learn from that experience and make that part of your journey. But like you said, don't try to hide that, because that's the reality that a lot of people go through, whether it's classes or maybe you're in between jobs and you're fighting that battle of application after application and not hearing back or getting rejected. But it's okay to learn from those experiences, because ultimately that shapes your career journey, and kind of your life journey into what it's supposed to be. And I know it's hard to think when you're kind of in the trenches during those hard times that everything happens for a reason. But once you kind of move past that, move forward, and have the ability to look back and see through those experiences, even though it's a little cliche, I feel like it really does help shape who we are. And it all works out in the end, one way or the other.
I think sometimes, like, everything happens for a reason can be a little bit bristling. Like, I don't necessarily like to hear that all the time, but like, you can make the reason, right? Like,
Mhm.
if, sometimes things just suck, right? It just sometimes it's just not working out. And oftentimes we don't have any control over that. Things just happen. Life is a lot of moving parts, and sometimes you don't have any opportunity to move any of those parts. Sometimes it's just knowing what parts you can move and what parts you can't move. You get to learn, just as you said, you can learn where you can go and where you can't go. There's always something to learn. And sometimes you learn, this sucks. And finding who's there to support you, finding, when you have friends and family that are experiencing the same thing, that you can be there for them too. But yeah, there's always something to learn.
If you were talking with, say, a current student right now that maybe has kind of been going down this non-traditional path and is starting to second guess their choices, or trying to figure out what is next, what kind of advice would you give that student as they're kind of navigating the turbulent stage of their journey?
Well, I would say sometimes things are hard, and that's okay. And sometimes things are too hard. And you need to think, like, really take a moment and think, like, is this hard because it's hard and it's okay? Because it's supposed to be hard? Or is this hard because it's too hard? And what I mean, but when I say too hard, is what's going on inside you, mentally, emotionally, physically. Is there something going on that that you need to work out, that you need help with. It's okay to ask for help. That doesn't mean you need to see a therapist. When I say help, maybe it does, right? But like maybe you just need to talk to a friend. Maybe you need to see a doctor. Maybe you need to go home and talk to your family. It's okay to take a break from school. It's also okay to take a break from your job. It's this is the place, Michigan Tech College. This is the time where you can take a step back and then you can come back. And it's very forgiving. It's incredibly forgiving. Trying to hang on too tight, like way too tight, is only going to make it worse if it's too hard. If you're going through something, you know, if you're sick and you're going through some physical situations, or you're mentally and emotionally exhausted and you just need to take a step back, you'll be so much more able to do what you need to do if you take that rest, if you take that break, take a semester off and you come back, you'll be recharged and refreshed. The hanging on too tight is, I mean, just think about if you're going to the gym and you've been lifting those weights, or you've been running on that treadmill, and if you never take a break, it's exactly the same thing. You just get exhausted, you get sloppy, and you see no returns. You take those rests, you take a rest day, you come back, you can see it, right? It's anybody who has done any workouts or strength training. The rest day is just as important as the workout day. If you push yourself too hard, too far, too fast, you can hurt yourself, and then you can slide backwards. It's the same thing at Michigan Tech, at any university. When you're going too hard, too fast, you're holding on too tight, it feels like the stakes are high because there's money and there's expectations from family. But the reality is, you simply won't be able to meet those expectations if you're pushing yourself too hard, too far, too fast. You need to take that rest sometimes, and it's totally fine. It happens all the time. I did it. Here I am. I am successful. I'm doing great. Lots of people do it, and we're here to help support you. That's what the whole university is here for. We want you to succeed. Sometimes you need to take a break.
Well, and I think that brings up a really good point about asking for help. I know, like, for me personally, I'm terrible at asking for help. And I think it kind of comes back to that, like, failure mindset of people kind of get down on themselves, being like, well, I should be able to do this on my own. But like you pointed out, you don't have to do this on your own. There's a lot of different resources on campus, in your community, and people that are here to support you and help you through this journey. So if you are a student that's kind of struggling with maybe this burnout, this failure, trying to figure out next steps, some of the resources are things like your academic advisor. We've got career advisors and career services. You can come talk to us. We've got counseling services if you're looking for more of kind of that mental health support. So there's a lot of different resources on campus, and it would be great to get rid of the stigma that asking for help is a bad thing. Realistically, I feel like a lot of students probably get into that point at some point during their
Mhm.
collegiate journey and don't necessarily ask for that help when they really need it. I know
Yeah.
personally, I had a couple of moments like that while at Michigan Tech as a student myself. I was trying to figure out whether or not to keep my major, and I had kind of gotten to that point of, is this class too hard? And I probably hung on a little too tight, but I forced myself to get through it. But there were definitely resources on campus that I could have leveraged that probably would have made that entire process way more manageable, rather than just being stubborn.
When we talk about those categories too, like the advising and counseling services, there's so many different types of resources within those categories too. Counseling services has this sort of like stereotypical counselor therapy that you would think of when you think of counseling, but then there's peer support, and there's group sessions, and then there's just sort of fun activities that they do that are really laid back. And then they have this, oh, I can't remember what it's called now, but when you don't really want therapy, but you just sort of want to ask them questions. It's really low key and it's informal, and you just want to get some advice, sort of like off the record. And that's just one example, right, of just counseling services, student mental health and well-being, right? The same thing with the academic success center. There's so many different ways that you can get resources, career services, right? It's not a one size fits all thing, right? Everybody learns differently, everybody needs things slightly differently. So Michigan Tech has this wide array of resources that, because we know our students are unique and they're amazing and they need things in different ways. um, Academic departments offer different things as well. you know we have, if students need to take a step away, they can come talk to the dean of students office, or if they're not sure, right, if they think maybe they're on the fence about it, we've got an amazing group of people in that office that can help. And they, just have a conversation and explore, like, maybe it's just one class, maybe it's the whole all of my classes. I just want to talk about it. I don't know, I don't want to make a commitment. That's it's what we're here for, is to have conversations and make sure you're doing what's right for you, because that's what we want, is to make sure, you know this path is going to suit you.
Well, and if somebody, whether current student, alumni, professional in industry, if they have kind of the mindset that it's maybe too late to make a change, or they've been kind of going the same path for so long that they don't want to detour, what kind of advice or feedback would you give them, for somebody who's maybe concerned to make that leap or make that change, and kind of switch up where their career journey is headed?
If you want to be fully fulfilled and not feel stuck, what do you have to lose, right? If it's You got to find this balance, right? If you're not truly unhappy where you are, maybe there's small changes that you can make, right? But if there's something inside you telling you, pointing you in a direction, that sounds to me like that's a passion, right? And if you have a passion, it aligns with your values, it's going to really lead to a fulfilling career. Research shows, it tells us, right, that people are happiest when they have a career that aligns with their values and their passions. They find more happiness, they find more satisfaction. And those journeys aren't always straight, right? They're winding, and people find those late in life. They might find them early, but they often find them late in life too. We find people come back to school, they get those degrees later. They might have to get a master's degree, or maybe a second bachelor's. But if you are partway through a degree and you realize maybe it's not the one for you, you can talk to your advisor, and maybe you don't have to even take any extra schooling. Everything might be able to just transfer over. But there are classes at Tech that can help you explore different majors. If you're just starting to get into those second year classes, third year classes, and you're realizing, this isn't what I thought it was. This is the perfect time to realize that you've got your whole life ahead of you. Now you realize it, now that this isn't quite what you want to do. Perfect, right? Now you're still here. You're still here. You haven't even left yet. You're still in the place where you can take all the classes, and you haven't gotten your degree yet. Perfect. We've got the people that can help you figure it out.
Well, and I think that's a great mindset to have, kind of, especially for students who are currently enrolled. It's not an end all be all. You have the flexibility and the freedom to make those changes. Yeah, you might be around for an extra semester or two, depending on how everything shakes out, but there's worse things in life than learning more and really kind of finding what it is that you're passionate about, and making sure that it does align with kind of your core values, so that by the time you do get out into the workforce, you can find that fulfilling job that helps give you the work-life balance that you're looking for, and continue to grow down that career. As you were going through your educational journey and then ultimately transitioning into your full-time career, were there any pieces of advice you were given, or any kind of quotes that kind of stuck with you during that time, that kind of helped inspire you as you were going through your journey?
I'm a person who tends towards being introverted. Something that's always stuck with me is way back when I was getting ready to leave for college the very first time, my high school guidance counselor told me to sign up for everything. And that was terrifying to me because I was a person, in my high school, I signed up for a decent amount of things because it was a tiny, tiny high school. But I also knew everybody. And I was heading off for a university that was quite large. And I did not sign up for everything, but I signed up for a good amount of things. Once I got to tech as a non traditional student, I was commuting, I was a transfer student. I was worried that I wouldn't meet anybody. And I hung on to that advice and I signed up for an enterprise. I signed up for a couple other clubs. And that was invaluable because I was able to meet friends. I was able to have things to put on my resume as a humanities student in an enterprise program. I would argue that's incredibly valuable for the other students in the enterprises because they don't often have those skills that they really need to be able to communicate their science to industry and employers. And they need that, right? They need that. And it's incredibly important for our humanities students to be able to get that on the job, boots on the ground training to be able to see the science and communicate it and to work with employers, work with other students across campus, signing up for things, not being afraid. At that time, transfer students didn't go through orientation like everybody else. So I didn't get to meet all the students coming in. I think it's a little different now. And I think that's a great change. Sign up for things. If you're a little nervous, if you sign up for too much, that's okay. You can pull back later. But if you won't know what you like unless you try it, right? Now is the time to try some new things that you'll never see, probably won't have ever seen before. And if you have, that's great. Then you get to keep doing it. But try things.
I think that's a great piece of advice. Get out there, experience as much as you can. And like you said, it's a great opportunity to maybe figure out whether or not the path you're headed down is the right fit for you. You may join a student organization or an enterprise and realize that you're really passionate about whatever it is that is. And if it doesn't necessarily align with kind of where your degree would put you, it's a great opportunity to kind of pivot and really make the most of your time. One of the phrases that I learned about quite a few years ago that this conversation has kind of made me think of, especially for the people that try a lot of things and like a lot of things, and then maybe struggle with kind of figuring out how to narrow it down. So a while ago, there was a TED talk, and the conversation was around the term a multi potentialite. Have you ever heard that term before?
No, I haven't. No.
It's one of my favorite TED Talks of all time. And it dives into kind of the idea that you don't have to specialize in one thing, that it's okay to want to have that diverse background and try multiple things. So you've got the potential of multiple kind of paths or journeys. And if you can find a way to bridge that gap and make it come together, it can create really unique opportunities, especially if somebody kind of is a multi-potentialite. Pairing them with a subject matter expert or somebody who is a specialist, those can create some of the best teams to kind of drive each other for innovation and creativity. So I would encourage anybody, if you're kind of in that realm where you are trying a lot of things and you do enjoy a lot of things and maybe you feel kind of on the outside, definitely check out that TED Talk and search out multi-potentialite. It's a great 15-minute video and has some great conversation around it. Well, Paige, I really want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule at Michigan Tech to sit down with me and have this conversation. And hopefully it inspires and connects with folks who maybe are doing this non-traditional or considering taking a non-traditional path and realizing that there's more than one way to get from point A to point B, and it's not a race. So the timeline really doesn't matter in the scheme of things. So yeah, thank you for joining me and look forward to seeing kind of your journey as it continues here at Michigan Tech.
Thanks, Brian. I really enjoyed our conversation.